Okay, we are officially right at the top of the hour. So thank you so much again, everybody, for joining today's Facebook Live session hosted today by Vic. Our topic is our journey to global digital acceleration. So really excited to have all of you listen in today, participate. It is going to be quite an interactive session. We're going to leave about 20 minutes at the end to take all of your questions, which we'll address. And hopefully you find today's session quite interesting, informative, and also, pique a little bit of your interest in this whole channel of e-commerce. First, I'm Jenna Mashni, our Vice President of Global E-commerce and Digital Marketing at BIC International. I'm joined by my partner in crime here, Anna Ritchie, who's our Head of Digital Content Strategy and Operations. And so we've both been at BIC just a little around a year and have been on this journey, really helping BIC grow our digital presence, but also, test and learn our way through this evolving space. So excited to share with many of you our point of view, our perspective, things that we're still learning and trying ourselves, recognizing this is such a fluid and dynamic channel where there's so many things evolving, and we're very excited to host today's session. What we're going to cover. So there's three main things that we're excited to share with you. First, as a result of COVID-19, there's been so much focus in the landscape of digital. So wanted to take a few minutes to just ground everyone in the latest perspectives in terms of research and insights about the channel as it is exploding around the world, and also with a lot of industry experts providing perspective on where digital is headed. We'll then shift a bit to give you a peek into the world of BIC, share our strategic framework in terms of how we're growing our digital business, as well as optimizing our digital shelf to show up and be top choice for hopefully many of you and other consumers out there in the e-commerce landscape. And then finally, just wrap it up with a few tips on, what are the key principles that we use here at BIC, but also what I recognize are quite a few industry best practices in terms of how, big, large organizations like BIC, even small, if you're a new business owner or adventuring in this digital landscape, what are some of the key principles and strategies for you to take away and leave as perspective? And so first I thought I would start with just a really a quick glimpse of the reality of, I sit here near New York City in the United States, and the digital journey has been quite a journey over time, but recognizing, in other developing markets like Morocco, where this journey is starting to explode and many capabilities are going to follow those like the US or other really developed markets like in the UK and Europe. And I thought I'd give you an example of something that's been very recent and close to me personally to give you a little bit of a flavor of what's happening and how quickly this channel is moving. So these are my kids. I have a 2-year-old daughter, Leilani, my son, Mazen, who's 6 years old. And yes, I am that mom that, we're still quarantined here in the house. And I very much cheat a bit. I do lean on our digital babysitter, the iPad. And oftentimes when it's, in the evening and everyone's winding down, I do let my kids get a little bit of iPad time. And one of the things that they love doing, they love watching kids YouTube. And, it's YouTube channels that screen for, content that's appropriate for their age. And they love watching other kids play with toys. They both love this YouTube star, Ryan. Now, Ryan is famous. His parents, he's got twin sisters and himself. He films himself around his house and playing with toys. And he's been on sort of the YouTube network for several years and actually just got a deal with some of our largest global retailers, such as Walmart. And on his channel on YouTube, he was promoting this new app. called the Walmart Toy Lab, where kids like my son and my daughter who are watching his channel got served a link directly on YouTube that he was telling everyone, go check out the Walmart Toy Lab and purchase some of, look at to see and build some of my Ryan toys or other things they're interested in. So what do my kids do? They click on the link and it takes them to a new app to download. They download this app on the iPad and it's this Walmart Toy Lab. And as everyone's been home through this COVID-19 quarantine period, they're keeping themselves entertained. And this toy lab allows you to pretend like you're creating toys through the app. But what it really does is show you toys that are available on the Walmart e-commerce site. My kids fall in love with this toy. They click on one of the toys and it takes them directly to walmart.com, where on the Walmart e-commerce site, it shows them this toy. In this case, it was this little machine that makes stuffed animals because you could do it at home. And they begged me to get this toy. And so what did I do? I bought them the toy. And so they were very, very happy. You can see I'm not the cleanest person in terms of what their playroom, lots of toys, but this one in particular, I let them play after bath time and it was a hit. And I was fascinated by this process that a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old in my house followed this digital journey on their own, which resulted in me making a purchase online. Now, I also have to say the trigger of this was devices. And so as we go through this, Anne and I will talk to you about the importance of the nature of mobile devices and the power of it enabling the digital channel. Now, there's lots of research that's published with a lot of different industry experts. We lean very heavily on a partner that publishes quite progressive insights, Edge by Essential. And, their perspective that they've shared is as the digital ecosystem expands, that many retailers and customers that may not necessarily use an e-commerce site or use many digital platforms to reach out to consumers, over time will build their ecosystem. And so as retailers start to progress things like their marketing capabilities, their ability for shoppers to be able to shop not only in their physical store presence, but also online, connecting more with social platforms like Facebook or Instagram, or even Google and YouTube, that retailers will become more and more sophisticated in their digital ecosystems, which ultimately at the core is centered around a tremendous amount of data. And as data becomes the center of everything, it helps us become much more smart about what the consumer is thinking, where the consumer is going, and how to engage with the consumer in a way that brings them into a brand experience like engaging with BIC. And especially now, as a result of COVID-19, you can see here additional research that was recently published in the last couple of months that the consumer touch points from the point when a consumer wants to just explore and discover what types of entertainment is out there, what type of products they need to replenish their shelves at home, and they start to think about and consider their options, maybe ultimately make a purchase, and then getting the end product to their home. And through those touch points, more and more consumers are more willing and have been engaged with digital platforms, like more than double the amount of folks that are accelerating in gaming applications. Over 50% are spending more time on social media platforms like Facebook, as there's more time at home. And again, the power of devices enabling this sort of ecosystem, and consumers are more connected. And so all of this plays a role in how, even going forward, as the result of COVID-19, the landscape has changed, and it's made a permanent lasting mark that's going to require manufacturers and companies like BIC to make sure that we're transforming and pushing the boundaries proactively to consider how significant this consumer landscape has changed. Now, when we take a look from a commercial standpoint, just sheer sales growth, you can see lead countries that have already started to progress the e-commerce growth agenda has almost doubled in the latest couple of months as a result of COVID-19. And why is that? So we know that the channel in terms of e-commerce and consumers starting to explore in some developing markets, like in Morocco, starting to lean on platforms like Jumia or even Take a Lot to be able to explore and find the products that they want at home. And then you have more developed markets like who you see here that are already progressing and more sophisticated in terms of e-commerce. But as quarantine periods restrict folks leaving their homes, e-commerce has become the only place for folks to get their essential goods. And even in some cases, like we showed you before, engaging for entertainment and staying connected to any sort of normalcy has leaned on these digital channels, all fueling growth for conversion of products and services online. So as we look at this snapshot of Morocco in particular, recognizing, I know we have lots of guests who are joining, our Facebook Live session today all around the world, but this is really centered around many of you who are joining us, in the Morocco landscape, that before COVID-19, the channel was growing quite rapidly. So you had, double-digit growth in key segments for e-commerce online, like food and personal care, even fashion and beauty, or even hobbies and toys, with the ability for that payment transaction, the cash to carry, so the transaction happening in person, growing almost 50%, along with credit card transactions. And now, as you fast forward as a result of COVID-19, you see even more of these e-commerce transactions growing triple digits, as well as websites that are forced to really grow in their offerings to consumers to make sure that there's speed from the point of needing to purchase something, getting it in the hands of the consumer, and offering a lot of different delivery points for contactless delivery and things of that nature, which has been quite common actually all around the world, but fascinating to see even in a developing market how quickly and rapidly this has been able to accelerate. Then when you see in terms of market trends, what's happening, from a customer perspective, you have, the largest e-commerce player in the region, Jumia.com, which has over 5 million viewers that come driving traffic, and consumers that are coming to the site monthly, 250,000 daily. You have brick and mortar, so customers that we say have a physical space, now building out their e-commerce, their own sites to be able to serve consumers in that local market, both online and physically in store. And then also there's, interesting partnerships that are being formed between pure play e-commerce companies as well as brick and mortar to join forces, and again, reaching consumers in a time of need where COVID-19 has just been this unprecedented pandemic that's forced the entire ecosystem to evolve quite rapidly. Now, in terms of what's happening from a digital trend perspective, both pre and post COVID-19, that's quite interesting and really plays a role in how, for all of us to think about what are the next sort of set of moves that we have to make proactively to account for over the next 3 to 5 years. Some predictions say that by 2040, around the world, 95% of all purchases are expected to come from e-commerce, which is quite, fascinating to think that in, less than 20 years from now, that imagine a world where everything is happening in a digital ecosystem. Consumers are going to demand more information. They're going to have a lot more power at their fingertips to research and explore, and also lean on others in the digital network for their opinions to influence their ultimate purchase perspective and decision. Also, from a manufacturer or brand hat, it also forces us to think a little bit differently, to evolve. How do we then capture the hearts and the minds of consumers and shoppers? That the role of digital media and digital strategies are going to become more and more critical, not only to survive, but also to thrive and grow and surpass many other brands. So as you've been listening, since we are through Facebook Live, I want everyone to give a like if just in this latest 3 months during this quarantine period, if you found that your use of devices in your home, or even engaging on certain digital channels like Facebook, that your time in these digital arenas, or even if you made purchases through an e-commerce site, have increased in the last 3 months. I know between myself, I'd be putting a lot of likes out there. I won't disclose how many hours in this household we have consumed digital content, but it has been quite high. And recognizing this dynamic and just the speed at which this channel is growing, at BIC, we have a proprietary digital framework called Spark, which we deployed about a year ago as our way of really accelerating across 100% of our organization's knowledge, awareness, and rallying behind a strategic framework that helps us position us as a market leader in the digital ecosystem, and ultimately to drive an increase sales online, where consumers are starting to shift and make their purchase decisions. And Spark stands for these 5 digital sort of principles that are necessary, the fundamentals of how you win on the digital shelf and win online. And it starts with search. And I'm going to go and just give a little bit of an example of each of these, and Anna will take us through a deeper dive into the last C, which is content. So you have, search, where a consumer goes onto a site or the largest search engine, global search engine like Google, looking for information. And there's a tremendous amount of work involved to make sure that BIC as a brand shows up right in those relevant searches for the categories that we offer products today. Price becomes quite transparent in a world of digital, which I'll get into in a bit, and plays a really important role in how we think about offering the best value and quality to our consumers through digital channels and on e-commerce sites. The assortment, the type of products that we offer online versus other channels like in a physical brick and mortar environment. Also, there's sort of strategy behind what's that right assortment to offer as somebody's in that mindset and researching and looking for to make that purchase online. Ratings and reviews is the 4th pillar of Spark, and as globally, more than 80% of consumers, shoppers, people rely on their networks, whether they're social media networks, online networks, like if you're going on to Jumia to look at what are other consumers saying about this particular product. It plays such a critical role in that ultimate decision to purchase a product. And then finally, we say content is king. It is really one of the most critical elements of Spark, which we'll go into a bit deeper on. How do we use content to tell our story? And again, offer powerful information that ultimately showcases BIC as a brand, but also reaches consumers and provides information that we know consumers are looking for. So first, and I'll touch on very briefly each, because we want to make sure we leave a lot of good time at the end here for your questions. Search, as I mentioned, majority, so more than 70% of consumers globally, when they're looking for a particular product, they typically will go directly to an e-commerce site. They go straight to the home page, right at that top bar, the search bar. They're going to type in the broad category or range of what they're looking for. And what shows up is called the landing results. And in those landing results, on the first page of whatever shows up, typically it's about 3 to 5 products. Over 80% of people will only consider what's showing up right after that initial landing page. And so as you have to scroll further down your phone to explore additional products, your chances of really being considered get less and less. And so at BIC, we've deployed quite a few strategies, both, from an advertising perspective, but also what we say organically, or, in this ecosystem, there's so much science behind tactics you can do to show up in the most relevant searches and show up very high on those landing results. As I mentioned, is that when it comes to price, in the world of digital, and especially as e-commerce platforms become more and more available, it becomes quite a shopper's market where shoppers hold the power to explore, price compare, research who's offering the best value for your money. And so you can see as certain markets have more and more competitors that are using e-commerce as a way to communicate their offerings, pricing becomes quite tricky. That, from it holds the power in the hands of a shopper to be able to really look and see, where should I make my choice? And oftentimes for certain categories, they're going to try to look for the best value. As I mentioned before, there, assortment and what you list online versus what you may be able to find in a physical store. It can be the same or different depending on the retailer and depending on the marketplace. And so there's three sort of big things to take away in terms of what that matter with assortment. First is, and from a distribution perspective, really you can see that a lot of retailers in local markets, the largest retailer globally at Walmart as an example, starting to offer more ways to receive the product. So if it's pick up in store, whether it's deliver it to your home, maybe even curbside pickup or pick up at another central destination, that all of the point of pickup becomes a competitive advantage of where you want to list products for certain delivery options. In terms of the assortment itself, typically online, much of the shopper experience are looking for things, quite naturally, things that are bigger sizes. So the strategy of what we call bundling or multi-packing, you can see here an example of, this is one item, 2 7-packs that are packed together that's offered to the consumer, because in a digital shelf, you can do virtual bundles. So playing around with that strategy to find what and sort of put together the right combination of items that our consumers are really looking for. E-commerce allows this level of flexibility to be able to provide a really, really superior experience to our shoppers. And then finally, e-commerce ready packaging. So not only having packaging that communicates what the product is, the features and the benefits of a particular product, so that what you're listing on a digital shelf is very clear and a compelling message. And at the same time, nobody wants to receive a product at your front doorstep or to pick it up within a store or curbside with a package that's smashed and damaged. And so there's a lot of work to be done that, in working very closely with functions like supply chain and packaging and innovation to build the right type of packaging that's going to sustain getting to the physical someone's home, and go through that delivery process undamaged, so that it provides, again, a really great experience for shoppers. Last one here on my end, and then I'm going to turn it over to Anna, who will take us through content, is ratings and reviews. And, I mentioned, you can see that not all e-commerce customers offer the ability for other shoppers to leave a review for a product, but those that do, it matters. And research, shows here that the more reviews that a particular product has, that are positive in sentiment. So they're typically a starring system where we say anything above a 4.2 and a 5-star rating is quite positive, and that's what we're always striving for. And anything above at least 50. You see here this example of a very popular product of ours at BIC, over almost 7,000 reviews and above that 4.5-star rating. So, it leaves a little bit of a reassurance when you see how positive others are, thinking and feeling and saying about your product. And so striving for that feedback is also a really big part of our strategy and focus here at BIC with Spark. So one last, engagement here. I want you to go ahead and hit your like button. If you found yourself, if you have started to do a bit more exploration, discovery online, researching, or even maybe starting to purchase more online, especially as a result of this quarantine period for some markets, if you typically rely on ratings and reviews or feedback in your, your social networks to decide if you're going to purchase something or not. So go ahead and hit your like button if you feel like this applies to you. You've done this before. All right. With that, I am going to turn it to Anna to take us through content.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. So we're really excited to talk about digital content, not only for the digital shelf, but really digital marketing in general. It's a huge focus of ours here at BIC to figure out not only what content our consumers want, but how does it differ across all of the different channels, and especially, of course, as we're talking about today, the digital shelf. So first, just at a top line summary, right? What do we mean by content? It's a term that gets thrown around a lot. And the way that we're defining it here at BIC is really content is a written or visual asset that's designed to either educate, entertain, inspire, and ultimately sell. And content is becoming so much more important for a number of reasons, which I'm going to take you through on the following slides. Here, I just wanted to share the importance of content as we're seeing it with some emerging trends. So we know that millennials in general, as this emerging group, really want to and proactively seek out videos from a brand that they support. We also know that 87% of consumers rate product content as extremely or very important when making a decision to buy, as just demonstrated by Jen. And I know I personally can relate to this, but 25% is the amount of time in a consumer's day that's spent engaging in some kind of digital content. So here we can see content's not only important, but it has to be good. We know that 35% of consumers will say that they'll feel annoyed if branded content is poorly written, poorly designed, if it has errors, or if it doesn't hit the mark. And almost 100% of shoppers have not completed a sale if there was incomplete content. So really going back to the importance of having solid, robust information that your consumers are looking for when searching for your products online. And so they don't just want more content, they have really big expectations from us, right, as brands. They want it faster, they want it better, they want it really authentic when they're engaging with brands online. And so I wanted to just pull kind of the top 6 takeaways that we're using here at BIC and that I think would be helpful when rolling out your digital content strategies online based on what we're seeing in these trends. So the first one is, of course, and this grows every year, the more the merrier. So millennials in particular are using at least 3, if not more, devices at once to engage with digital content. Multitasking is at its max. And this continues to grow 130% year over year. This means we need a lot more content to distribute across all of those different devices. This idea of show versus tell, right? So 70% of consumers saying that they'd rather watch a short video to learn about a new product than read something that's really lengthy and a lot of words. We know that the drive to buy now and immediacy is absolutely on the rise and really driven here by social commerce. So Facebook drove 80% of all US social referrals to retail sites in Q1 last year, followed by Instagram and Pinterest. With COVID-19, we know that this grew instrumentally. And so being able to give consumers a really easy way to immediately buy when they're browsing on their social platforms is a huge spike for brands this year. This idea of purpose versus profit, I think we've seen a lot as a topic growing over the past couple of months and even weeks. So a majority of consumers, 90%, reported that they were likely to switch brands that were supporting a good cause if the price and the quality was at par. And then speaking up. So this references the influx of voice assistants and Alexa and Siri and any other devices that you can speak to make a purchase or make an inquiry. This is absolutely on the rise. It's something that I know I personally had my eye on for a little while, interested to see what it really means for content. But we know that by this year, 50% of all searches will be voice searches. And that really makes an impact on how you craft your content and your product titles and all of that. And then finally, authenticity wins. And this goes back to the ratings reviews conversation we had a couple of minutes ago, which is that over 60% of consumers are going to trust an influencer or peer's opinion of a product more than what we as brands have to say about themselves. So really giving those voices a platform, sharing those reviews and those testimonials, and partnering with authentic influencers is definitely a best practice that we see on the rise that isn't going away anytime soon. So when defining our content strategies, we like to think about it in this kind of who, what, when, where, and why model, right? And defining the who is the first and most critical step in our digital content marketing strategy. And this is, who are we talking to? What are their behaviors online? What are their expectations from brands? And what kind of content do they want to engage with? And we've pulled just a couple of top line summaries here. And of course, there's a lot of analysis that goes into this because every brand is unique, every consumer and region is unique, of course. But the way that we like to think about it is based on the audience. What are the devices that are most commonly used to consume content? This is information you can get from Google, from your media agencies. It's very readily available online. And then look at where content is consumed. So are they reading blogs? Are they spending all their time on TikTok, right? And this is going to kind of change depending on, of course, demographic, age, mindset, and so on. And then there's also some mindset considerations for content that I always want to make sure we have top of mind, which is depending on what the consumer's need is, where they're consuming content, and what they're looking for, that really should drive what the objective of our content is. So for example, I take the boomers on the left who are using their computers and their laptops to consume content a lot on blogs and Facebook. We want to make sure that we've got really comprehensive information that we're really relevant. Versus when we go over to the right, we want to make sure that our content is really pushing forward what our brand beliefs are, video being an absolute must for this group, and really looking to do some scroll stopping content because we know that expectation is so much higher. So we have a lot of considerations on the right here, just general attitudes, media behaviors, shopping behaviors. All of this will really help guide and define this core objective of your content, keeping your consumer in mind when you're developing it. And then determining, of course, the where. So this to me is the second most important consideration for your content, because you can have really amazing content, but if it's being delivered in the wrong place, it won't resonate. And so thinking about the role and what your consumers are looking for really will help drive your content strategy. So for example, for digital shelf, this is a place where consumers are looking to be educated about your product and converted. They want to know, what is it? Why is it better? How many are in a pack? What color is it, right? Really detailed information and also differentiation as they're price comparing or cross-referencing with other brands. Your more broad-reaching paid digital media, this is a place to really drive awareness. You're looking to inspire consumers, excite them with your great videos and your assets, highlight different partnerships that you have, and really focusing on a little bit more of the broad-reaching equity-based messaging. On your own sites, so this could be your brand.com or your own social media pages, you have a lot of opportunities here, but really engagement being one of the key drivers that you want to aspire towards with your content here. So what's some content that they would really personally resonate with? How can we inspire our consumers here and also support different causes? So you can see an example here from our French team who had a really special edition for the medical staff locally around France during COVID-19, something that had a lot of pickup and engagement on social media when it was ran. And then finally, I really wanted to see what your thoughts were, and does a brand's content online really impact whether or not you engage with them? So feel free to hit a like if this is something that resonates with you. I know I personally will, because I think that especially with so many things happening in the world, content plays such a critical role in keeping consumers engaged with brands with such a proliferation of sites as well. Great. Awesome. So I'll sum up some of the key takeaways that we have here to accelerate digital. So one, and I think we've talked about this across the board, really understanding the external landscape and using insights to guide the actions. So what are the latest trends? What are our competitors or your competitors doing? What are some of those broader digital and e-commerce trends that we can take and adapt and apply to our own business? The second is really staying disciplined in your ruthless prioritization. And I know I'm emphatic about this, being really focused on nailing the fundamentals first, especially in the digital and e-com space. There can be shiny objects everywhere. They're fun, they should be tested with, and we should learn. But really prioritizing and focusing on the basics and the fundamentals first is the best place to start to build that solid foundation for your business. And then finally, being inspirational with how you represent yourself online. And here's where it comes back to content and really being unique, scroll stopping, engaging, and ultimately conversion driving with how you engage with your consumers online.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is, well, hopefully you found these last several minutes just here seeing a little bit of how we approach things at BIC. Our perspective, as Anna said, we're staying very focused on the things that in ways to reach our consumers in the most relevant ways. And we just want to say thank you for your engagement today. And we're going to leave the next 10 minutes or so and take a look at the questions that you have for us, and happy to answer along the way. So I'll stop sharing here, and we're going to open it up for our first set of questions for anyone who wants to post.
Yeah, and Jen, I just saw one come through, and I thought this would be a great one for you. What are the skills that are necessary for someone who wants to work within the e-commerce field?
Oh, great question. For me, the number one skill is love to learn. I always say this, that I got into my first kind of break in e-commerce just after I finished my undergraduate degree. And what I learned was, in the beginning, it was sort of this, I need to find the right answer. Here's the exact answer, and I'm going to go and execute and do this. And I would get so frustrated with, oh, okay, 2 days later, all of that changed. And so, fast forward almost 20 years from then, the nature of having sort of that ability and that knack to move really fast, know enough to get, use insights to get your signals, learn what works in that moment, and be open to exploring what's the next thing you got to push the boundaries. So that's number one. I think the second thing also, as I mentioned before, sort of at the core, having a little bit of that skill for and passion for data. Digital becomes this place that there's so much you can be creative and sort of exploratory, but digital can be quite calculated. And so those who sort of kind of get a little bit of an edge know how to harness, understand different types of digital data, and are able to sort of formulate solutions with that at the core. So I would say data-driven, kind of analytical nature is also kind of a key capability at the core for someone who wants to get into e-commerce.
Absolutely. If I can add one more too, just for me personally, I think flexibility is a big one too, because the space is changing so much over time and with unexpected circumstances too. And I found that the minute I feel like I know it and I've nailed it, it changes. And that flexibility has really helped a lot in terms of being open to new platforms, new ideas, even if it feels a little different than what your strategy had been, and kind of evolving along the way. So
absolutely.
Okay, So a question just came in. What is the key point for designing content across multiple segments? And so I think I'm happy to take that one, and then Jen, turn it over to you for any builds. You know, I think going back to that objective is the biggest point that I would say is the key to success, which is really understanding before you start developing your content, who it's being developed for and what its purpose is, and getting very specific and focused. So do you want people to know who your brand is? Do you want them to know why you're different? Do you want them to buy it? And really, who is that key consumer and what are their needs? And I think really nailing that strategy first and spending the time to get really specific, in my mind, is kind of the first and most important step in developing the content that you need for your different audiences and segments.
And I think the only thing, put the consumer at the center, overlaid with who you're possible, depending on the channel. If there's a customer lens to that, I think it's quite often for brands to have so much passion for your brand and to lead with the brand voice and what the brand needs and what we think. But really the game in the e-commerce, but also any digital media channel, whether it's owned or paid, is really thinking about, as Anna said, you know, what does the consumer want and need, and focus and putting them at the center.
Yeah,
great question. Any other questions, Anna, coming through?
Yeah, one more. It's do most countries only have one major e-commerce pure player? Is that normal or expected? It's a good question.
Great question. You know, it's interesting. It varies quite a bit. I would say generally there's, depending on how large the market is. So let's take China or the US or South Korea, at the UK, as large, quite mature markets, have 2 or 3, I'll say, dominating pure play e-commerce leads. And probably back when they were middle mature, not quite so mature, developing in this space, there was always sort of the 1 or 2 that were leading the way. So I'll take, you know, for developing markets like Morocco that may have today 1 or 2 pure players like a Take-A-Lot or a Jumia, who's just starting to, you know, plant their seeds around in many markets. It probably won't be too much sooner where others are going to push the boundaries, especially as the need for e-commerce is going to grow. So quite quickly, you'll probably start to see a lot more pure players jump in there as competitors against if your market has only 1 or 2. Great question.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Will we have from anyone out there? Will we have our time together here in our live session? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I really appreciate so much everyone taking the time, engaging with us today, and good luck on your journey. Whether you were joining today just to learn and listen and understand, or if you are a part of a brand or maybe interested in exploring this channel, hopefully we piqued your interest a bit. And also check us out online. Check out Vix, see what we're doing, and follow our journey. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.